Hello and welcome to Provoking Tech. I'm Zach, and in today's video, I'm going to be cloud gaming on a little bit older game, playing Tomb Raider on both LiquidSky and Paperspace Parsec. This game is getting close to about the 5-year-old mark now, but it is a shining example of how cloud gaming can really excel. So without further delay, let's go ahead and jump right to it. Alright, so today's video is actually going to take us back in time about 5 years to the release of Tomb Raider. So I got Tomb Raider a couple years ago on one of the infamous Steam sales, and has just been sitting in my library waiting to be played. And my experience with cloud gaming was so great on it, so I decided to go ahead and make a quick video detailing my performance as well as my experience with Tomb Raider. So diving real quick down into the graphical settings, I played this of course on 1920 by 1080. VSync was set to off, and beyond that the quality was set all the way up to the maximum with ultimate, and motion blur and screen effects were both set to on. So as you can see from the gameplay footage playing in the background, the overall gameplay experience was very fluid and very responsive. I did play with both a controller as well as a keyboard and mouse to get a good idea of the overall gameplay experience from two different gameplay styles. And even when playing on the keyboard and mouse, which are generally more input sensitive than playing with a controller, I had no noticeable input lag when playing. I think just goes to show that these streaming services and streaming softwares have got to a point where they can encode and decode the frame so quickly that they're not really inducing too much input lag in terms of your gameplay experience. So as long as you have a good connection and you're located pretty close to the data center that you're playing on, you should be able to get a very good experience as long as you're not playing super competitive games. So now moving on to the section that everybody is waiting for, and that is the performance metrics with those cold hard FPS results. So before we dive into the results, I did want to mention how I actually get my numbers for my minimum, maximum, and average frame rates for the different hardware tiers. Generally for games that have online matches, I'll play a couple different matches and take the average of those matches to form my minimum, maximum, and average frame rates. Tomb Raider, on the other hand, has a built-in benchmark. So what I did for Tomb Raider is I ran the benchmark twice and took those results and took a 15-minute gameplay segment for each hardware tier and averaged those two different benchmark runs with the gameplay run just to get a nice good experience of what you should be able to expect on your side when you play Tomb Raider on the different cloud hardware. So in terms of minimum frame rates, for LiquidSky Gamer we got 38.3. For LiquidSky Pro, we got 62. For Paperspace GPU Plus, we got 42.3. And for Paperspace P5000, we got a whopping 92.7 frames for the minimum frame rates. Real quick, before we get into the average frame rates, I did want to mention that LiquidSky does limit their maximum frame rates to 68 FPS. NVIDIA uses a shared hardware experience and utilizes the NVIDIA grid for the GPU. So the shared hardware experience means that there are multiple different users on a single CPU and a single physical GPU. And that's how kind of like the NVIDIA grid technology is built to be used. I don't know if the maximum 68 FPS limit with LiquidSky is from LiquidSky themselves to their software so that a single user won't degrade their experience of other users, or if that is a limit of the NVIDIA grid technology. But I did want to make it clear that LiquidSky does have a limit on the maximum frame rate, which does skew the average frame rates a little because certain tiers, especially the LiquidSky Pro, will constantly be at the 68 FPS for the maximum frame rates. So moving on to the average frame rates, for LiquidSky Gamer we saw an average of 51.6 frames. For LiquidSky Pro we saw 65.9. For Paperspace GPU Plus we saw an average of 72.8. And for the Paperspace P5000 we saw an average of 122 frames. So as we just saw with the benchmarks, the Paperspace P5000 hardware tier is complete overkill for an older game like Tomb Raider, even when we max out the graphical settings as high as they will go. So for the best price to performance ratio when you're gaming on Parsec with Paperspace Hardware, I would recommend just going with the GPU Plus option. It did have an average of 72.8, which is very good, and while it did have a dips in the minimum down to 42.3, I really don't think you'll notice these dips, as I didn't notice them, but your mileage might vary, of course, but you should be able to adjust the quality settings down a little bit and have a very good experience with the GPU Plus hardware tier and save a little bit of money at the same point in time when compared against the P5000 hardware tier. When gaming on LiquidSky, I would recommend starting off on the Pro tier if you have the credits for it. I had an average of 65.9 FPS and the minimum for the Pro tier was 62 FPS, so you're pretty much guaranteed to have a solid 1080p 60 FPS experience on the Pro hardware tier with no tinkering required. If you are a little bit strapped for credits though, that doesn't mean that the gamer hardware tier is going to be a horrible experience. Without any changes at all, it was an enjoyable experience, but it did fall short of that goal point of having a 1080p 60 FPS experience. You could turn down the settings a decent amount and will be able to achieve that with the gamer tier though if you are trying to save a little bit of money and game as cheaply as possible in the cloud. So that's it for today's video, guys. Hopefully you enjoyed this video. Hopefully it was enjoyable and informative at the same time, and if it was, give it a big like. I greatly appreciate that. Also, if you're not already an existing subscriber, smash that subscribe button to stay tuned for more great videos from Provoking Tech. Until next time, Zach out.